Hello, today I will be presenting on bipolar 2 disorder, and my client's name is Jessica Scott, and that's spelled Jessicascott, and she's 38 years old. My name is Dr. Melissa Lear, and that's spelled Melissalear. We have two differential diagnoses for Jessica Scott. The first is bipolar 1 disorder, and we have ruled that out because criterion A was not met, and that states that she has never met the criteria for a manic episode. There has never been a manic episode. And then the second differential diagnosis is bipolar 2 disorder, and we rolled that in because all of the criteria were met. And our primary diagnostic features, the very first one is people with this disorder cycle between depression and hypomania. So again, that's people with this disorder cycle between depression and hypomania. Alright, the second one is when hypomanic, they exhibit difficulty controlling impulses, expansive mood, and sometimes irritability. So again, that's when hypomanic, they exhibit difficulty controlling impulses, expansive mood, and sometimes irritability. Alright, so on to the client's story. So Jessica has been referred by her current psychotherapist. She's 38 years old and she's a part-time graduate student, and she lives by herself. Her academic history has been pretty inconsistent. She's kind of jumped around a little bit. She hasn't worked in one job for more than a couple of years, and her current job right now is cleaning houses, and she's been doing that for about 9 months. But she has a master's degree in psychology. She worked as a counselor for a little while, and then it was kind of like too depressing for her to hear the stories of the clients all the time. So then she began a PhD program in political science, and she did all of her coursework, but then she jumped into a paramedic training at the community college, but then she never completed the training. And then with her PhD program, she didn't begin her dissertation yet, so she's just kind of stuck. She's been treated for ongoing depression, and she describes that her upbringing was punctuated with much strife, as she would say. Both of her parents struggled financially, and it was really hard for her. And with both of them working so much, she describes feeling lonely like all the time in her childhood. And she would come home from school to like an empty house. And her mother also drank excessively to cope with their financial challenges. And when she was drunk, she was very emotionally abusive to Jessica and her father. But Jessica's father didn't do anything to protect either of them, so he didn't really stand up for them. So she has some skewed ideas happening. And then, yeah, they said her mother's alcoholic rants, so it sounds like it was pretty bad. And Jessica also had a suicide attempt at age 16. And then she was referred to she was referred for her psychiatric treatment, for her ongoing depression. And then since that time, she's seen therapists on and off, but recently her depression has gotten a lot worse, and she's chosen not to seek help. So that's pretty interesting. She's also in a long-term relationship. She's been with this guy for about 2 years, and she says she really loves him and she wants to marry him really bad, but he's been showing less and less interest, and he brought up separating, and this has made her depression even worse. obviously. And then her current relationship is the longest that she's had before. And she's had several relationships, but she said that they ended pretty quickly because she has a tendency to be demanding and confrontational. She describes being depressed most of the time and copes with her sad feelings by eating. She is constantly eating chips, cookies, kettle corn, anything, peanut butter sandwiches, and she's gained 20 pounds in a couple of months. She also awakens in the middle of the night, unable to go back to sleep, and then she'll like wake up and realize that she slept for 13 hours. She also has no energy or interest for life, and she's always tired. She talks about her failures all the time, and she can't concentrate on her dissertation. Even though she talks about wishing that she was dead, she hasn't made any recent suicide attempts. But then it's interesting because she also experiences emotional highs, and she describes a pattern of cycling between her depression and feeling up. So during these times, she gets very little sleep, like 4 to 5 hours. She talks on the phone all the time and runs up huge bills. She's super social, and she feels like her thoughts are racing. She's able to get a lot done when this happens, but she states that her friends, they show concern for her about the change in her behavior, and they tell her to slow down and not take on too much. And during these episodes, she hasn't gotten into real trouble. It's just been, she actually describes it as a very positive thing. So that is the story of Jessica Scott. And onto multi-axial diagnosis. Axis 1 is bipolar 2 disorder. Bipolar 2 disorder. Axis 2 is none. None for Axis 2. Axis 3, history of suicide attempts. So Axis 3 is history of suicide attempts. Axis 4 is relationship difficulties. Axis 4, relationship difficulties. And for Axis 5, we gave Jessica a GAF of 65. Alright, we only have one theoretical perspective today, and that is biological perspective. It's pretty long. I'll read it slow. Okay. The client's symptoms may be due to a genetic predisposition. During her depressive periods, she may have a deficit of serotonin and norepinephrine. During hypomanic periods, she may have an excess of norepinephrine. There may also be an imbalance of serotonin levels. Brain imaging research has shown abnormal brain structures such as cortical thinning in frontal and temporal lobes, and decreased gray matter in the prefrontal cortex. This helps explain the mood regulation problems seen in people with bipolar 2 disorder. Alright, and I'll read that again. Alright, so it's biological perspective, and it says, the client's symptoms may be due to a genetic predisposition. During her depressive periods, she may have a deficit of serotonin and norepinephrine. During hypomanic periods, she may have an excess of norepinephrine. There may also be an imbalance of serotonin levels. Brain imaging research has shown abnormal brain structures such as cortical thinning in frontal and temporal lobes, and decreased gray matter in the prefrontal cortex. This helps explain the mood regulation problems seen in people with bipolar II disorder. Alright, so that is it for the case on bipolar II disorder and Jessica Scott. Thank you very much and have a great day.